My name is Barbara, and I am 31 years old. I was standing at the head of a private dining room I'd reserved and paid for when my boyfriend raised his champagne glass. The candles were already lit on the cake in front of me, the kind with gold lettering and 3 layers, because I'd decided if I was turning 31, I was doing it properly. Colleagues from work sat along one side of the table, a few close friends, his sister. The restaurant staff hovered near the door, waiting for the toast to end so they could serve dessert. He smiled the way he always did when he wanted attention, confident, relaxed, practiced. To Barbara, he said, voice carrying easily across the white tablecloths and flickering candles. We've been together 3 years now. A few people smiled. Someone nodded. I met his eyes, expecting something warm, something private. But if I'm being honest, he continued, she's not my future. She's more like a phase I'm growing out of. The room fractured into awkward laughter. Not everyone laughed. Some people looked down at their plates. Others glanced at me, searching my face, waiting to see if this was some kind of inside joke they didn't understand. I smiled. I leaned forward and blew out the candles. Applause followed, louder than the laughter, a collective relief that the moment had passed. He set his glass down, still grinning, like he'd delivered the line of the night. I cut the cake I'd paid $300 for, handed out slices, made small talk about a project I was leading at work. My colleague Beverly caught my eye from across the room. He didn't laugh. He looked concerned. I felt calm, clear, lighter than I had in months, because the toast wasn't the betrayal. It was just the first time he said it out loud. If you'd asked me before that night how we looked as a couple, I would have said solid, stable. The kind of relationship people assume is headed somewhere permanent. We met 3 years earlier through mutual friends at a rooftop gathering downtown. He was charming in that effortless way, quick with jokes, attentive without trying too hard. He worked in wellness marketing, bounced between projects, talked about launching something of his own someday. I worked long hours as a senior analyst, paid my bills on time, planned my future in spreadsheets. We started dating a week later. The first 6 months were easy. He'd come over after work, cook with groceries I bought, talk about ideas for his brand like they were already half-built. I didn't mind covering expenses. I made good money. He was ambitious. It felt like partnership. He talked about growth, about timing, about how not everyone's path is linear. I believed him because believing him felt generous, and generosity made me feel like the better version of myself. Small things crept in slowly, comments he'd make without realizing they stuck. He'd talk about an ex-girlfriend who almost proposed to him, but wasn't financially stable enough. He'd compare me to friends' partners, saying things like, well, Barbara is at least reliable. Reliable. Like I was a savings account, not a person. When I suggested we make things official and move in together properly, he'd smile and say, let's not rush labels, let's enjoy the now. By the end of year 1, I was paying his half of the rent, not because he couldn't afford it, but because his company wanted him to take unpaid training courses. He framed it like an investment in his future. I transferred $1,500 every month. He thanked me with kisses and promises that it was temporary. Year 2 brought more. His car needed repairs. $1,000. His insurance spiked. His student loans needed restructuring. Then his sister's destination wedding came up, and he didn't want to go alone. I paid for both our flights and the resort stay. $12,000 for that week. He posted photos of us on the beach with captions about gratitude. In private, he joked to friends that I was a safe bet. I didn't hear that until later. His phone habits changed. He angled the screen away. Took calls in the bathroom. Once I asked who he was texting at 2 a.m. He laughed it off, said it was his sister. The next morning, while he showered, I saw a notification flash. A name I didn't recognize. The message started with, last night was fun. I didn't confront him. I filed it away. A crack in the story I was being told. By year 3, I was exhausted. I added it up once. Rent support, vacations, repairs, dinners, gifts, $73,000. I stayed anyway because leaving felt harder than continuing, because I kept thinking the next month would be different. Then my birthday came around, and I decided to make it a proper celebration. I booked a private room at a restaurant I loved, invited 15 people, ordered a custom cake, paid for an open bar. He helped me pick the menu. He even suggested the champagne toast. 3 weeks before the party, he started acting different. Not distant, more performative. He'd post photos of us with captions like my rock, but in person, he scrolled through his phone while I talked. One night, I came home early and found him on the couch video calling someone. He ended the call the second he saw me, said it was a client asking about sessions. His face was flushed. He wouldn't look at me. When I asked, he told me not everyone worked 9 to 5 like I did. 2 weeks before my birthday, we went to dinner with Beverly, a colleague I respected, and Beverly's partner. He spent the whole meal making passive digs. When Beverly talked about a project, he said it must be nice to sit at a desk all day. When Beverly complimented his outfit, he said he actually had to put effort into how he looked for work. I asked him about it later. He said Beverly was into me. I didn't argue. It didn't matter. I was with him. I'd built my life around him. The week of my birthday, he asked if I'd invited Beverly. When I said yes, he told me not to spend the whole night talking to him. The day before the party, he came home with a new outfit, price tag still attached. He said he used his own money. I'd seen his bank balance 2 months earlier, $300. I didn't say anything. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the last 3 years. Not just the money. The way he made me feel like I was lucky he stayed, like I was temporary by default. The thought didn't make me angry. It made me calm. After the restaurant emptied and the last guest hugged me goodbye, I drove home alone. The city lights blurred past my windshield, and I realized I wasn't replaying his words anymore. I wasn't rehearsing arguments or imagining what I should have said back. My mind was quiet in a way it hadn't been for a long time. When I walked into the apartment, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't pour a drink. I sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and pulled up the lease. His name wasn't on it the way he thought it was. Authorized occupant, not co-tenant, a small distinction that suddenly felt enormous. I drafted an email to the landlord requesting his removal, effective immediately, and sent it at 11:42 p.m. The confirmation came back less than 10 minutes later. I read it twice. Then I logged into my credit card account and canceled the card he'd been using. The system confirmed deactivation within 24 hours. I removed him from my car insurance policy next, effective at midnight. The website refreshed, and his name disappeared like it had never been there. I didn't feel angry. I felt precise. At 1 a.m, I texted my brother, who happened to be a family lawyer, and told him I needed advice on a clean financial separation. He called me immediately. We talked for almost an hour. He told me to document everything. No emotional conversations. No explanations. Let the paper do the talking. When we hung up, I opened a new folder on my desktop and labeled it with his name. Saturday morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from him. No voicemails. I didn't return them. Instead, I made coffee and started pulling bank statements. 3 years' worth. I highlighted every transfer, every dinner, every trip, rent support, utilities, insurance, flights, hotels, gifts. I built a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and notes. Cancun trip, car repair, rent months 18 through 36. The total sat at the bottom like a quiet accusation. $73,812. I printed 2 copies, one for me, one for my brother. By noon, I started packing his things. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, books. I used boxes left over from a furniture delivery, labeled them neatly. At 2, I called a courier service and paid for same-day delivery to his sister's place. $340. I added it to the spreadsheet. At 4, the locksmith arrived. The landlord had already approved the lock change. 30 minutes later, the new keys were in my hand. At 6, his text started coming through. Why isn't my card working? Barbara, what's going on? My insurance company says I'm not covered. Did you forget to pay? I didn't respond. I blocked his number, then his socials, then his email. I watched each confirmation message appear and disappear, and with every one, the apartment felt quieter. Sunday morning, his sister called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was heated, accusing, confused. I sent one text back. His belongings were delivered yesterday. He is no longer on my lease or insurance. I'm moving forward. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked her number too. Monday, I went to work like nothing had happened. Beverly pulled me aside during lunch and said I seemed different. Lighter. I told him I was. And for the first time in months, that felt true. I wasn't avoiding a fight. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I had already ended it. Sometimes clarity doesn't come with shouting. Sometimes it comes with timestamps, receipts, and a folder on your desktop. The first crack showed up 2 days later. He texted from a new number, confused, asking why his card declined at a boutique. I didn't answer. An hour after that, his insurance company called him, then me, then stopped calling altogether once the policy change finalized. By evening, he was knocking on the door. I didn't open it. I watched through the peephole as he stood there, phone in hand, scrolling, rereading messages that would never be answered. He left after 10 minutes, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, already rehearsing a story where he was the one wronged. By Thursday, the panic had found a voice. Voicemails stacked up from unfamiliar numbers. First confusion, then irritation, then bargaining. He asked if we could talk like adults. He said I was overreacting. He reminded me of the trips, the dinners, the way we looked together. When that didn't work, he pivoted to guilt. 3 years, Barbara. You don't just disappear. I didn't disappear. I exited. His sister tried again, this time calmer, suggesting mediation, coffee, closure. I replied once with the same sentence I'd sent before and blocked her again. The silence did what arguments never could. It forced him to sit with the consequences without a script to follow. By the weekend, the story reached his circle. Mutual friends texted cautiously, asking if everything was okay. I answered the same way every time. We're no longer together. I'm not discussing it. One friend pushed, saying he was devastated, that I should at least hear him out. I told her to ask him about the birthday toast. She didn't text back. Sunday afternoon, his father called. He didn't accuse, he didn't defend. He asked if what he'd heard was true. I told him yes, calmly, without embellishment. There was a long pause on the line, the kind where someone is rearranging their understanding of a person they love. He apologized. Not for his son's behavior, but for mine being put in a position where dignity had to be defended at all. He said he wished he'd been there to stop it. I thanked him and meant it. That night, my ex posted a black screen on his story with white text about betrayal and blindsides. No names, but enough implication to invite speculation. The comments didn't go the way he expected. Someone asked why he'd humiliated me publicly. Another asked why he'd needed my money if I was just a phase. The post vanished within minutes. The internet has a way of sniffing out bad math. By Monday morning, the calls stopped. Not because he'd found peace, but because he'd run out of angles. The narrative he'd relied on, charm, confusion, a little self-pity, collapsed without an audience willing to buy it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt settled. I learned something in those days. When you stop funding someone's comfort, you also stop funding their denial. The panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing access. 6 months passed without noise. No late-night calls. No surprise emails. No indirect messages through friends pretending to check on me. Life settled into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar at first, then quietly right. I worked. I slept well. I stopped bracing myself before opening my phone. And somewhere in that calm, something unexpected happened. Beverly and I started talking more. It wasn't dramatic. No confessions, no rebound energy. Just coffee after meetings, conversations that drifted from projects to childhood stories to the small things people reveal when they're not trying to impress. He never asked me to explain what happened with my ex. He listened when I offered pieces and didn't fill the silence when I paused. It felt equal in a way I hadn't realized I'd been missing. In early summer, we took a trip to Greece. It was supposed to be simple. A break between deadlines, a change of air. We split every cost without discussion. Flights, hotels, dinners, partners, not sponsors, he said once, smiling like it was obvious. We spent long evenings on balconies watching the sun sink into the water, talking about what we wanted from life without negotiating ourselves down. One night, he asked if I ever regretted how I left. I thought about it, then said no. I regretted how long I stayed. We made it official when we got back, quietly. No announcement, just a shift in language. My partner, his girlfriend. The certainty of it surprised me with its simplicity. The engagement happened in October. A cliffside in Crete, wind off the sea, no audience. He didn't make a speech. He asked a question. I said yes before he finished it. We posted a photo a week later, tasteful and unremarkable except for one detail, the ring catching the light on my hand. That's how my ex found out. He showed up at my office the following Monday. Mascara smudged, hair pulled back, urgency crackling off him like static. My assistant asked if I wanted security. I said, "Give me 1 minute." I stepped into the lobby and he started talking before I could say anything. "When did you start lying to me? How long has this been going on? After everything we had." We didn't have everything. We had imbalance. I handed him a folder. Inside were screenshots, Dates, bank statements, a voice memo he'd sent his sister 6 months before my birthday, saying he was keeping me around until someone better showed up. He flipped through the pages, hands shaking. "This isn't fair," he said. "You blindsided me." No, I stopped pretending. People were watching. I lowered my voice. "You called me a phase in front of 15 people. You took 3 years of my money, my time, my energy, and offered me jokes in return." The toast wasn't the betrayal, it was the admission. Security stepped closer. He looked around, realized the scene wasn't turning in his favor, and left without another word. I went back to my office. Beverly was waiting. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Perfect." After he left the lobby, I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I opened the folder on my desk one last time. The receipts, the spreadsheet, the screenshots. 3 years reduced to columns and timestamps. I printed everything, slid it into a binder, and wrote a short cover letter. It wasn't angry, it wasn't sarcastic, it was factual. Francis asked for an explanation. This is it. 3 years of financial support, itemized. $73,812. Every dinner, every trip, every bill I paid because I thought we were building something. I mailed it certified to his sister's address and closed the file. Some stories don't need an audience. They need an ending. Beverly and I married in the spring. Small ceremony, close friends, no speeches that tried to impress anyone. My brother officiated and kept it short. We honeymooned in Iceland, the place my ex once said was too cold and boring. It was perfect, quiet, stark, honest, the kind of beauty that doesn't perform. Months later, I ran into a mutual friend at a coffee shop who mentioned my ex had moved to another city, started over somewhere in the Midwest. He asked if I was happy. I said yes without thinking. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was pretending anymore. That felt like happiness. The lesson stayed with me, simple and sharp. When someone tells you who you are to them in a room full of witnesses, believe them the first time. Don't argue with a confession. Don't negotiate your worth. If you're someone's phase, let it end. If you're someone's partner, you'll never have to fund your own disappearance. I didn't win by cutting him off. I won by choosing a life where love doesn't come with invoices and respect doesn't arrive as a joke. I stopped waiting. I stopped explaining. I built something real with someone who showed up without needing to be reminded. That birthday, when I blew out the candles, I made a wish without realizing it. I wished for clarity. It came quietly, with a locked door, a blocked number, and the steady peace of being chosen back. I didn't expect anything else to come from it. After the wedding, after Iceland, after the binder was mailed and the door was closed, I thought that chapter was finished. But endings don't always disappear cleanly. Sometimes they echo. It started small. A mutual acquaintance mentioned they'd seen him at a bar near their office. He looked thinner, quieter, less sure of himself. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need details. I noticed that even hearing his name didn't tighten my chest anymore. That was new. That was progress. Then one afternoon, months later, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Almost. The message was short. "This is his sister. I just wanted you to know he read the binder. All of it." He didn't say much, but it changed something. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back a single line. "Thank you for telling me. I wish you well." I didn't continue the conversation. I didn't reopen anything. Closure doesn't require maintenance. Beverly noticed the shift before I did. One night, we were sitting on the couch, half watching a documentary, and he said, "You don't flinch anymore." I asked what he meant. "When people talk about the past," he said, "you used to brace like you were waiting for impact." I thought about it. He was right. I wasn't guarding a wound anymore. I'd let it heal properly instead of poking at it to see if it still hurt. We built our life in a way that would have terrified my old self. No unspoken debts, no invisible scorekeeping. We split things because we wanted to, not because one of us needed rescuing. When one of us had a hard week, the other showed up without keeping receipts. Love felt lighter when it wasn't transactional. On my 32nd birthday, we didn't do anything extravagant. No private rooms, no speeches, just dinner at home with a few close friends. At some point, someone asked how we met. I told the short version. No drama, no bitterness, just facts. When they laughed at something unrelated, I realized I wasn't measuring the room for safety anymore. I trusted it. Later that night, after everyone left, I washed dishes while Beverly dried them. He kissed my temple and said, "I'm glad you didn't settle." I smiled because for a long time I thought endurance was the same thing as loyalty. I'd learned the difference the hard way. Every now and then, I think back to that birthday toast. The word phase, the way it landed in the room and sat there, daring me to argue with it. I'm glad I didn't. Arguing would have kept me trapped in someone else's narrative. Walking away let me write my own. I wasn't his future, he was right, but I was mine, and that turned out to be enough.